Good afternoon, everyone. So we get to talk about some fun stuff like communication and employee well-being, things like empathy and emotional intelligence. So I look forward to the conversation. So I think we could start off with just take a minute just to tell us what you do so we can frame.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Colvin, and I currently serve as the Dean of Students at the University of the Virgin Islands, Albert A. Sheen campus. And I am a little over a month in to this position, so I am so excited to be here. I was originally from St. Thomas, and I left, and now I'm back after many, many years later to serve in this capacity within a higher education setting. And again, it's just a great opportunity for me to give back to the Virgin Islands community, the community that instills so many values in me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Torhera Durand. I am a member of Generation Z, which I'm very proud to say. I'm also a young entrepreneur. I self-published a book called How a Nancy Spun Madras in September of 2022. And I also do economic development and work for the UVI Research and Technology Park. So I wear many hats, a lot of which I'm excited to get into during the conversation today. So thank you guys for having me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vicki Hicks, and I am a massage therapist for many years, as well as an educator and a small business owner for close to 30 years in the States. And then I recently brought an apprenticeship program for massage therapy here to the Virgin Islands during the COVID pandemic. Worked with Ms. Shenica Sebastian diligently, and I'm very excited about the opportunity, and wellness and empathy and compassion is something that as a therapist we have to always pay attention to when we're working with people. So I'm excited to be included into this conversation today and hopefully have some insight on that. Thank you.
Okay, great. So thank each and every one of you for your participation today. So empathy. I'm going to start with that. And if you look up empathy on Google, because everything could be on Google, right? Often it's found with sympathy. And I always make the distinction. For me, the easy distinction is sympathy is like a feeling, right? And empathy is action. Empathy is like compassion and understanding and putting yourself in the other person's place. And we often are having this conversation nowadays about how COVID has left us, you know, this separation, what that has done to people's ability to communicate, what it has done to patience and other, and I don't want to, they're described as soft skills in the program, but I like to think of them as like essential skills. So I'd like us to have a conversation about the workplace and effective communication, empathetic understanding, and the place of virtues like that. Why don't we start in the middle, and then we'll flank it with both ends.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
When you asked your question, the first thing that came to my mind is how the workplace environment can impact us as employees. And so if an employer isn't empathetic to their employees and they're not creating a space that is employee-centric and focused on their employees, they don't, they're not understanding if an employee has a sick child or, a medical issue comes up, or even if they're trying to take courses to better themselves, employees can be left to feel unheard, unwanted, unvalued, or undervalued. And as a result, any human in an environment where they're not feeling acknowledged or listened to, they're going to lash out in some form. And that might not be direct conflict, but it could be in a passive-aggressive manner. And employees aren't going to work and function at the level that you want them to. And so I feel it's very important for employers to be empathetic to their employees and the needs of their employees and find ways to ensure that they're meeting those needs.
Okay, great. Thank you. Dr. Georges?
Yes, I love that question. Thank you. And for me, the way how I view it, I always look at the intersecting social identities that we all enter the workspace with, right? Whether that is race, class, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, you name it. And I think it's very important for us, to always recognize the privilege that we hold in said areas, right? Particularly as it relates to certain dominant identities that we may hold. So when we think about, empathy in the workplace, it's always making sure that we're putting ourselves in someone else's shoes to be able to understand their lived experiences. Because it is so important to understand that from a cultural perspective, because if we're not, we're doing ourselves a huge disservice and we're not staying up to date in terms of the changes that are needed. As you've said before, particularly as it relates to the pandemic, I think the pandemic really exposed so many different things across society, across the world. And I think that because of that, there have been so many changes, particularly within the workplace, more patience and flexibility with allowing people to work from home, work remotely, and things like that. But again, it's understanding, again, having that empathetic view to make sure that people have what they need in order to be successful. Because if people are not, if they don't feel heard, they don't feel seen, they don't feel like you have somebody that is there to also be your champion, the chances of them showing up for you in the workplace to even give more, it's not going to happen. So again, it's very important to, especially in a leadership position, to always be empathetic to the staff, to the team, and even within my capacity as a dean of students, even passing that same thing on to our student staff that are there as well, because it is very important for us to understand that our students also have, different challenges that they're navigating, right? This generation of students is not the same like how we were when we were growing up. There's things that are constantly evolving, things are constantly changing. So we have to stay up to date in terms of the needs of students and always putting ourselves in their shoes in order for them and ourselves and our organization at large to be successful.
Great, thank you. Vicki?
So, yes.
I'm going to use first names sometimes.
Absolutely.
But, okay. Just want to make sure nobody is.
I agree with all of that. I mean, it is. I know we all want to say COVID is over, and yes, it is over, but not for employers, not for the workforce. I think that people in general, we have. I know I get a little different when I'm in big crowds. I still think about it, so we have to realize that. It has to start from the top. It has to start as a business owner and as an employer and also a trainer. I have to think about each of my staff or students' personal life to an extent. It can't take over, but we have to understand those signals and those triggers. And in our profession or in the healthcare profession, one thing that we get is we get a chance to ask those questions. How are you feeling today? Do you have pain? Did you recently have a surgical procedure or an accident? So we have a way to guide that. But if I'm in a grocery store or in a department store, I don't know that information about my potential customer. So that's empathy is where you're almost able to see the feeling, but also understanding some of those triggers when someone is stressed or under a lot of pressure. So for better employers, and better employees, less stress will be much more productive for everyone on hand. So.
Thank you for such thoughtful responses. The comment, Dr. Georges, about lived experiences resonated because we were talking this morning about the diversity that you find in our territory. And so we have this opportunity, it really is a rich opportunity to learn from the lived experiences of others. And I wanted to kind of touch on the listening that Torhera, you mentioned. As a political candidate, when you go out canvassing or something like that, somebody will confront you and they'll say, what do you think about so-and-so? And if you give them just 10 seconds, they'll start to talk, So you learn a lot by listening to people. And you, as a politician, you don't just want to be talking. But there are people, when they are listening, that are thinking about their response. And so I think the active listening that we touched on in this section as well is an essential skill. Talk a little about how you practice active listening in the workplace or in general that helps to ease the interaction with others? I'm going to start with the last one this time.
Okay.
Vicki.
So, I mean, it really is rapport and getting to know your staff, knowing your colleagues, and understanding when sometimes they're not going to just come out and tell you. So being able to read body language can help. Being inviting and open, and letting them know that you're a safe place to come to if they do need to talk to you. So it's just very important that, although, you know, I guess as a boss, when I walk in, it's not like, oh my God, the boss is here. My staff are usually happy to see me because they know that they can come to me and talk to me about things, and the same thing with the rest of my team. So that's just really super important, to be approachable, to be open, and to allow them to have the discussion with you.
Okay, beautiful. Dr. Georges?
Yeah, I would say for me, one practice in terms of active listening is anytime that someone is in front of me or talking to me, it doesn't matter if I'm walking across campus or just going to the grocery store, I always make sure that they feel that they are the most important person in that moment, and I'm giving them my full and undivided attention. And that has come with years of practice and years of experience, particularly when working with college students, because, I mean, let's be honest, I mean, there's so many things that are happening. You have your emails, you have your phones that are going off. So sometimes it's very easy to get caught up in the distractions, but what's happening is that that person, right, that came to you for help, for support, all they see is you being distracted, right? So for me, what I've been practicing over the past several years is to, again, give whoever is in front of me my full and undivided attention, and again, make them feel that they are the most important person in that particular period. And then sometimes it does involve me making a sacrifice in terms of, like, if I'm running late to a meeting or something, you know, or whatever it is, but that's okay, because that person, they felt seen. They felt heard. They felt that there was somebody there that was dedicated to them within that period of time. And again, and that, I think that whole component, all of that establishes a level of trust, you know, between you and that other person. And then that will also encourage the person to see you as a leader, right? As someone that they can, you know, come back to in case if they need support or help or any additional resources.
Thank you. Torhera?
Yeah, something very important that was mentioned was practicing. And I'll be very honest, I am not the best at active listening. I'm very approachable, but a lot of the times, and I find with individuals in our generation, a lot of us suffer with anxiety and issues that are constantly plaguing our mind. And so as you're walking through your professional career and as a young professional, you have to find ways to practice these skills. In my current role at the RT Park, I often find myself practicing with my coworkers. And so someone will come to me and they'll be talking to me about something, but my mind will be focused on, oh, their facial expression doesn't really look like they're meaning what they're saying, or, you know, are they judging this and that? And sometimes you have to practice drowning out the thoughts that are in your own mind so that you can give your undivided attention to someone else. I think another issue is, you know, as Black people, Caribbean people, or individuals just living in the Virgin Islands, a lot of the times we don't necessarily acknowledge the trauma that we've personally faced and our ancestors, our parents have faced. And those traumas can sometimes tend to make us very protective of self. And when we're protective, again, we're not able to focus on what someone else is telling us. We tend to focus on self a lot of the times. And so we have to ensure that we're finding ways to overcome the things that might be plaguing ourselves so that we can give that attention to someone else and help them through whatever they might be going through.
That's an important point, ancestry, because I recently wrote a piece that talked about a culture of punishment. And when you evolve from that, and so sometimes your first response is force, sometimes your first response is violence to get somebody to do what you want them to do. And it's something that really it's important to consider it from that perspective. I wanted to touch on the reality of us leaders in the workplace when you are not at your best. You know, sometimes an employee comes in and you can tell, oh my God, she had a rough night, or they're not having a good day. And how an example of how you manage when you don't feel like being the smiling face, you don't necessarily feel like being the listener because you feeling something too. And I think employees can benefit, all of us can benefit from strategies about how you keep your own emotions in check and keep your own anxieties or issues from spilling over into the workplace. And to hear one to say, even though you may not be an active listener, you have a long time ahead of you to practice and get in line with that. But tell me about the experiences of managing your own emotions, emotional intelligence, looking at the emotions of others, and how you still maintain your space even when things are not going particularly 100% at the time. Dr. Georges, you want to take us off?
Sure. And again, this is still, you know, a work in progress. You know, and for me, a lot of it is making sure that, you know, I do keep myself in check because, you know, being in a leadership role, you know, being a role model, it's very important because students are looking at me, you know, faculty, staff, right? So, but it at the same in that same breath, we're also human, right? So, some of the things that I've done is making sure that I have strong connections with people outside of the workplace, you know, people that I can confide in, people that I can talk to and just de-stress, you know, to make sure that I can get all of that out, you know, all of those stressors, you know, all of the frustrations out to just kind of like talk it through and, you know, and just talk to, you know, someone, particularly, you know, if you have the resources, you know, a mental health professional, right, that can help you to kind of like navigate those different nuances, particularly within the workplace or even things that are happening within your personal life, because that's another piece too, right? The things that are happening in our personal lives also affect how we show up in the workplace. So it's very important for us to make sure that, like, again, we're human, things happen, our emotions can sometimes get the best of us, but I think it's also making sure that you also have that rapport with your staff, with your team, with your students, and explaining to them like, hey, you know, today I'm not having a good day. You know, this may not, you know, I apologize. If it's okay, if it's a virtual meeting, can I keep my camera off, right? Or, you know, I'm going to work remotely today. You know, those types of things. And then even if I'm dealing with a staff member that has the same type of experience, it's also extending that same grace as well, because it's impossible to expect, you know, everybody to be happy 100% of the time because we're so passionate, we're so involved within our personal life and in the workplace. So it's just being realistic and honest, but establishing those good rapport. So basically when things are good, making sure that they are good and you're maintaining that relationship. So, you know, when there's moments where you are sad, you're fearful, you're frustrated with certain parts of, you know, the workplace, that you have that the team can extend that same grace that you would expect from them as well.
Thank you. Vicki?
Yeah, so I'm a bit older than everyone here, and I come from a generation of we didn't talk about if we had anxiety or depression or ADD because we just didn't talk about it. And now that I'm more mature and older and realize it's okay to say, yeah, I have anxiety, you know, and my profession was great for me because it actually helps me reduce my anxiety because I had to learn techniques to be able to meditate or help myself to be calming. So being open with even yourself, not with getting into about your medical history with anyone, but being compassionate with my staff when they know I'm having a bad day or they're having a bad day. Sometimes I'm transparent with them and just say, hey, you know, I'm listening. I'm sorry, I have 5 other things going on, but let me listen to you right now. And then can we table this or meet? Unless if it's it's something that is urgent, then we would handle an urgent situation. But usually, I think if you're transparent with them as well, that you're human and we make mistakes and we're not perfect. I'm the first one to say I'm not perfect. You might have a better idea in this situation than how we should handle this than me telling you how we should handle something. So I do like to give autonomy to my staff as well. And then if they need it's okay to say if you need someone to talk to or you need to get professional advice, then that's what you should recommend to them. It's important that it's okay, not that it's negative if I think I need mental health help.
But I like that because if you're out front and you said, I'm having a bad day, so that puts everybody kind of on notice to maybe treat you with a little bit more care and helps you to kind of level yourself as well. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think transparency is essential. When it comes to employees, I always feel that there needs to be a chain of employees. So if I'm having a bad day, I might not want to go to my CEO and say, hey, CEO, I'm having a bad day. I'm struggling with my mental health. But maybe I could go to my manager and I could say, hey, manager, I just shoot you a text. I'm having a rough day. I'm dealing with a few things. Is it okay for me to just work from home? Is it okay for me to just sit back from this meeting? And I also think we need to extend that, again, back to empathy, to our coworkers as well. If we're having a meeting and you tell me you're having a bad day, then I have to be caring enough to say, okay, you could sit out on this meeting, I'll handle it for you. And then I know that you'll then have the opportunity to reciprocate those actions to me when, I might be having a bad day and vice versa.
Good. Thank you. Now, I'm looking for somebody to give me a sign because I think we're close to the time. Oh, we have 1 minute. Oh, we didn't get to go delve in. We were just beginning. Look at this fabulous panel. Okay. The idea of the customers you serve, and we in the VA, we're always talking about customer service. It's horrible some places. You go here, people are always complaining. And sometimes I put myself in the position of the person and I say, I wonder if they are training them. I wonder if that person knows what is expected of them. Because before I start to judge them and say they're not performing well or adequately, I have to wonder what goes into them, what steps are being taken to prepare them for the roles that they're placed in. And I think all of these things that we've been talking about tie in with making a workplace that delivers a product or delivers a service with grace, with compassion, that make people want to come back so we could make more money, et cetera. So I wanted to close on that and your thoughts about that issue for us and what may be some thoughts in regard to that.
If I may.
Yeah, you were.
I 100%. I've heard this sentiment many times that we have horrible customer service in the Virgin Islands. I have experienced many sides of the spectrum, and I don't believe that employees are being trained in the full extent that they can be trained. Sometimes we're trained on how to stock the shelf, how I want you to put on the prices, but not necessarily the manner in which I want you to interact with people or customers who come into the business. I also think that there's a duality as well. There's this I want to say it's a psychological term, but there's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And as human beings, we have a hierarchy of needs that have to be met in order for us to self-actualize. So, if I grew up in WD, I've lived in Safarali, I've had a lot of experiences where I understand, if you're living in an environment where your basic needs are met, you don't have clean water, you don't have access to food, you don't have a safe environment. When I'm coming into the workplace, there is no way I'm going to be able to interact with a customer and have any type of decent interaction with them.
Good thing. Thanks for that. We're going to get everybody to chime in before we wrap up.
Yeah, for me, it's a matter of just making sure that, kind of going back to what you're saying in terms of those basic needs, making sure that those needs are met among students. But it's essentially making sure that at every moment, at every layer, the students that I'm working with, that they recognize that, that we are here to support them no matter what. So, if the office says that, hey, we're open from 8:30 to 4:30, making sure that there is somebody that is always there to answer their needs, address their questions that they may have. And, and if that is not necessarily the culture or is that necessarily the practice of what happens, then there will be training, right, that is embedded to make sure that, that those practices are embedded. And it's also thinking about, well, what does it mean in terms of like providing customer service to students? Because I think sometimes, and I'm coming at it from my perspective, we don't always, I think to some extent, students for us are still, it could be perceived as if they are clients, right? But it's still thinking about, well, these students are coming to us for help, right? They're trying to succeed within their majors, within their respective areas, but it's still making sure that we have all of the resources that they need in order for them to succeed, and making sure that even at the basic level that we show up for them. And then and again, not saying necessarily you have to have a smiling face all the time, but just making sure that they see us as somebody that cares for them in all of their needs that they have at the university.
Thank you. And Vicki, close us out.
Sure. So it has to come from the top. Your staff they have to know what your culture is or what your brand is and what it is that you want from them. So that's the top, and you need to know that. If you're a manager or you're a CEO of a company or you own your own company, that's clear to have that for yourself. Then understanding, if you're transparent and you also understand and care for your staff that you're bringing on, getting to know them. I always look at it as talents. I think, if I know someone is really strong in this department and on this task, but I'm trying to make them do this, it's just going to resist each other. So when I hear, well, I always do this and this one does this, it's like, well, we all bring something to the table. We have to work as a team. We have to work as a group. Find your weaknesses, find your strengths, recognize them, and then help to train those people and the staff to where they need to be able to have a whole. And that's, I'm lucky because I get a chance to work with my therapists, because a lot of them go through my training and then they come and work for my company. So my definitions are very clear. That's not always the case for many, for different companies. So that would be my best advice, is to really get to know, invest. They're investing their time in you. We want our employees to work for us and understand us, but sometimes we just don't tell them what they really mean to us or what we really need from them. And I just think that takes away all the stress once people know what's expected of them.
Great. Thank you so very much. Thank you all for sharing your insights and for your thoughtful responses to the questions. Do you mind if I say something about your dad? Sure. I just want you all to know that Colvin's dad was an officer in the VI Police Department who lost his life several years ago. And his sister, Keshana, I taught her at UVI, and I know your dad would be immensely proud if he were here, and I just wanted to acknowledge his memory, because I knew him personally. Thank you all very much. Back to you, Asia.